dim the lights a little bit. Sit back and find a comfortable spot as we prepare to journey back into a mysterious and haunting era. Imagine a world of silence, far away from the noise of our modern lives, where beauty was a religion and the price was often blood. Breathe in the scent of old tea and wax. We are travelling back to the 19th century, a time of extreme contrasts and deadly elegance. In this era, hygiene was often a luxury, but the pursuit of the perfect appearance was a desperate and daily struggle for every high society lady. Open your mind to the secrets hidden behind these silk fans. Today, we explore the shocking truth of Victorian beauty and its toxic underlying costs. The sun sets on the modern world as we immerse ourselves in the shadows of London's past, where fashion and fatality walked hand in hand. Look into her eyes. She represents a generation that would sacrifice everything, including their health, to achieve the ultimate aesthetic ideal of their time. The music of the past begins to play, a low and melancholic piano melody that echoes through the halls of history in our collective memory. Every object tells a story of vanity and danger. Every shadow hides a secret about what it truly meant to be beautiful in the 1800s. The world outside is forgotten. Here, in the quiet of our imagination, the deadly rituals of Victorian vanity are about to be fully revealed to us. Letters from the past describe the lengths women went to. They wrote of powders and potions that promised youth but delivered only a slow decay. The silhouette was everything. A narrow waist and a ghostly complexion were the marks of a high-born lady, no matter the physical pain involved. We find ourselves in a time where science was young and often misinterpreted, leading to some of the most dangerous fashion trends ever known. Step closer to the vanity. These jars hold the ingredients of a nightmare disguised as a dream. Let us uncover the poisons of the boudoir. Beauty was as fragile as these dried flowers. It was a fleeting moment preserved by chemicals that were as lethal as they were effective. Time moves differently here. We are no longer in a rush. We are observers of a slow-motion tragedy played out in the name of style. The gloves are off. We are ready to peel back the layers of fabric and face the harsh reality of the Victorian era's beauty standards. Beneath the lace and the silk, there was a hidden world of suffering, a world where the pursuit of grace was a path to the grave. The walls of history whisper to us. They tell us that the mirror was often a liar, reflecting a beauty that was built on toxic foundations. What was in the mixture? What were the secrets of the ladies who spent hours preparing their faces for the public gaze of London's elite? Unlock the boxes of the past. We're about to enter the second chapter of our journey, where the ingredients of beauty become truly terrifying. As we dive deeper, the lines between medicine and poison begin to blur. Prepare yourself for the shocking reality of the Victorian vanity kits. The stage is set. The history is written. Let us begin our deep dive into the most dangerous beauty secrets of the 19th century. To achieve a complexion as white as marble, Victorian women turned to a substance that is now synonymous with murder, arsenic wafers. They would swallow these toxic pills daily. It wasn't an accident or a mistake. It was a deliberate choice to slowly poison their own blood. The goal was simple, yet deadly. Arsenic destroys red blood cells, which in turn creates a pale, sickly, and highly desirable look of total fragility. This translucent skin was seen as a sign of high status and refinement, even though it was the direct result of internal systemic poisoning. Advertisements in popular magazines promised that these wafers were perfectly safe, claiming they would clear the skin and give it a youthful glow. The local chemist was the source of these beauty aids. Arsenic was easily accessible, cheap, and widely used in everything from wallpaper to clothing. If eating poison wasn't enough, they also coated their faces in lead-based paints. This created a smooth, mask-like finish that hid any imperfections perfectly. But lead as a neurotoxin. As it sat on their skin, it was absorbed into the body, causing headaches, paralysis, and eventually a painful death. The internal organs suffered the most. The liver and kidneys would slowly fail as they tried to process the heavy metals being introduced daily. The very products meant to make them look alive and vibrant were actually killing them from the inside out, one application at a time. They were called candy by some, a sweet treat for the skin, but the sweetness was a lie, a deadly deception for the sake of vanity. Doctors of the time were often baffled by the symptoms, not realizing their patients were essentially committing slow suicide for the sake of fashion. The tremors were a common side effect of lead and arsenic poisoning. A shaky hand was the price paid for a face that didn't age. Beauty was a calculation. How much poison could one take before the body gave up? It was a dangerous game of balance and risk. Ammonia and mercury were also in the mix. These harsh chemicals would burn away the top layer of skin to reveal the fresh layer beneath. The pain was immense. The skin would become raw and inflamed, requiring even more lead paint to cover the damage caused by the previous treatments. Many young women found their way to early graves, their beauty preserved forever in the cold marble of a cemetery, victims of their own desires. Arsenic also caused the hair to thin and fall out. The irony was cruel. The search for beauty led to the loss of natural crowning glory. In the grand ballrooms, they looked like porcelain dolls, but these dolls were fragile, brittle, and slowly breaking under the weight of their own toxins. Jaundice and organ failure would eventually set in. The yellowing of the eyes was hidden by more makeup, a cycle of deception that never ended. These recipes were passed down through families, secrets of the trade that were actually recipes for disaster, shared in whispers between mothers and daughters. The cost of a pale face was a life lived in a haze of sickness and pain. The sweet death of arsenic was a reality for many. Even the air they breathed was contaminated. The dust from their makeup and the fumes from their skin creams filled their cramped, unventilated rooms. She looks ethereal, almost angelic. But the light reveals the truth. Her skin is a mask, a painted surface covering a body in crisis. The warnings were there, but they were ignored. The desire to fit the social mould was stronger than the fear of the poison bottle's label. The end was often quiet, a slow fading away, attributed to natural causes or faintness, when in reality, the chemicals had finally won the war. 1 wafer a day. That was the prescription for beauty. One tiny, white lie that led to a very permanent and painful truth. The obsession with a forehead without a single line led them to use lead-soaked bandages at night, pressing the poison directly into their brain. Leeches were also used to drain blood from the face, ensuring a pale look before a big party. Anything for that ghostly, aristocratic glow. The contrast of black velvet against white skin was the height of fashion, a visual trick to make the toxic paleness look even more dramatic. The reflection was shattered by the reality of the illness. The mirror could no longer hide the truth that the body was failing under the pressure. Lead poisoning attacked the nerves first, numbness in the fingers, a loss of balance, a slow descent into a world of physical confusion and pain. She was young, but her body felt old. The chemicals had aged her internal systems by decades, all for the sake of a smooth, youthful face. Breathe it in. Every puff of powder was a cloud of lead and bismuth, settling in the lungs and entering the bloodstream with every single breath. The beauty is gone, but the poisons remain in the soil and the floorboards of these old houses, a toxic legacy of a forgotten fashion era. Even the red for their lips was dangerous. Vermilion, made from mercury, was used to create the perfect rosebud mouth, poisoning them with every smile. Some beauty products were sold under the table, even more concentrated and more deadly, for those desperate enough to pay the highest price. The tragedy extended to the next generation. Lead on a mother's skin would often poison her children through simple contact and breastfeeding. The petals of life fell away, leaving only the sharp thorns of chronic illness and the cold reality of a life cut far too short. She is a statue of herself, a living monument to the era's obsession with a beauty that was fundamentally incompatible with human life and health. The letters tell the tale of declining health and mysterious fevers, coded words for the chemical destruction happening within the Victorian upper class. There was no distinction between the cosmetic and the lethal. In the Victorian mind, the pursuit of perfection justified any risk, even the ultimate one. The chapter of Arsenic ends, but the story of Victorian danger is only beginning. The eyes are the next window into their deadly world. The eyes were the soul of the Victorian face. To make them sparkle, they used a plant with a name that hides its true nature, Belladonna, the beautiful lady. But in the world of botany, it is known as deadly nightshade, one of the most toxic plants in existence. When dropped into the eye, it causes the pupils to dilate, creating a look of constant excitement, arousal, and intense, dreamy mystery. The effect was mesmerizing to others, but for the woman, it meant a world of blurred shapes and a terrifying sensitivity to any light. A simple candle or gas lamp would feel like a sun exploding in their eyes. The pain of light was the price of a beautiful gaze. They used it every night before a ball, a few drops to ensure that their eyes would catch the light and hold the attention of every man. Chronic use led to permanent blindness. The muscles of the eye would eventually paralyze, leaving them in a world of perpetual darkness and shadow. The fans weren't just for flirting. They were essential tools for surviving the brightness of a ballroom when your pupils were forced wide open. Every part of the plant is lethal. It contains atropine, which speeds up the heart and relaxes the muscles, but also poisons the central nervous system. Imagine a life where you're never quite sure what you're looking at. A life where the world is a soft, dangerous, and confusing blur. They also use lemon juice and even perfume in their eyes to create a sparkle, causing agonizing stings and long-term damage to the cornea. For them, the moon was a blinding light. The night was not a time of rest, but a time of visual struggle and chemical-induced wonder. The tears of a Victorian lady were often full of toxins. Her very emotions were filtered through a layer of dangerous chemicals and botanical poisons. This is how they saw the world, a dreamscape of light and shadow, where individual faces were lost and only the general atmosphere remained clear. Blindness was a common fate. By the age of 30, many women who followed these trends could no longer read or recognize their own children. Spectacles were seen as ugly and unfashionable. It was better to be blind and beautiful than to wear glasses and be considered a plain woman. Depth perception vanished. Simple tasks became mountain-sized challenges when your eyes were perpetually dilated and unable to focus on the world around you. The berries were a trap for children, but the extract was a trap for women, a siren song of beauty that led directly to a shipwreck. The medical profession started to speak out, but the fashion magazines were louder. They continued to praise the large, soulful eyes of the highborn. It was called the languid look, a look of exhaustion and deep thought. Even if the woman behind the eyes was just struggling to see, there was something primal and slightly frightening about it. A human face with the eyes of a cat, wide open to take in every scrap of light. The ripple effect of this trend was felt throughout society. It influenced art, poetry, and the way men perceived the ideal, passive, and dreamy woman. Morning was the enemy. The bright sunlight of a new day was a physical assault on a body that had been chemically altered for the night. Paintings of the era immortalized this look, cementing it as the standard of grace for future generations to look back on with a mix of awe. It was a ritual of the evening, a secret preparation that transformed a tired woman into a goddess of the night, at least to the observers. At the opera, the stage was a blur of colours. They didn't go to see the performance. They went to be seen in the golden light. The biology of the eye was being pushed to its breaking point. Every drop was a gamble with the future of their sight and their sanity. The mirror of water showed a haunting truth. The woman they were becoming was a stranger, a creature of chemicals and shadows, lost in the dark. The seconds ticked away as their vision faded, a slow countdown to a world where they would never see the faces of their loved ones again. Touch became their primary sense. The world of sight was becoming a memory, replaced by the feeling of silk, velvet, and cold stone walls. The beauty of the flower is short-lived. The beauty of the belladonna-eyed woman was even shorter, a flash of brilliance before the inevitable dark descent. The light was a barrier, a wall of pain that kept them trapped in the dim corners of their large, drafty Victorian houses and mansions. The precision of the dose was life or death. Too much belladonna could lead to a racing heart, hallucinations, and a complete collapse of the mind. In the small circle of light, she sees her eyes. They are vast and deep, reflecting a soul that has traded its clarity for a shadow. The records were filled with cases of young women losing their sight. It was a silent epidemic, a hidden cost of the era's fashionable aesthetic standards. She's at peace in the dark. It is the only place where her eyes don't burn, the only place where she feels truly beautiful and safe. The game is over. The beauty is achieved, but the woman is lost in a world that she can no longer truly see or understand anymore. The blood and the poison are one. The biology of the Victorian woman was a laboratory of dangerous experiments, all performed in the name of grace. She walks into the dark, a metaphor for her future. The eyes that were her greatest asset are now her greatest burden and her greatest loss. The treasures of the face are locked away. We move from the eyes to the body, where the structure of beauty becomes even more physically crushing. If the face was a mask, the body was a cage. The corset was the foundation of every Victorian outfit, a structural requirement for any lady. Tight lacing was a daily ordeal. To achieve a 19-inch waist, women would endure extreme pressure that physically reshaped their entire skeletal structure and internal systems. The ribs were forced inward, sometimes overlapping each other. This wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a slow, mechanical crushing of the person inside the garment. The lungs had no room to expand. Every breath was shallow and fast, leading to a constant state of oxygen deprivation and lightheadedness for the wearer. Fainting was so common it became a social trope. The fainting couch was a standard piece of furniture designed for women who simply couldn't breathe anymore. Steel and whalebone provided the rigidity. These materials were strong enough to hold the body in a shape that nature never intended, regardless of the pain. The internal organs were displaced. The liver was often pushed down, and the stomach was compressed, leading to chronic digestive issues and permanent internal scarring. Eating a full meal was impossible. The corset acted as a physical barrier to nutrition, forcing women into a state of semi-starvation to maintain their fashionable figure. When the laces were finally undone, the skin was bruised and raw. The relief was temporary, as the cycle would begin again the very next morning. The silhouette was a uniform. To be without a corset was to be loose and unrefined, a social failure that few women were willing to risk. Sometimes the body fought back. Fainting was a sign of the body's desperate need for air, a short circuit caused by the mechanical constraints of high fashion. Smelling salts were the constant companion of the corset. Ammonia was used once again, this time to shock the lungs into taking a life-saving, shallow breath. The spine would curve and weaken. Without the corset, many women found they could no longer even sit up straight, their muscles having withered away completely. It was an addiction to an ideal. The thinner the waist, the higher the status. They were competing to see who could endure the most pressure. The Industrial Revolution brought better corsets, but it also brought more efficient ways to torture the female form in the name of a perfect, hourglass shape. The body was divided. The top and bottom were separated by a waist so thin it looked as if it might snap at any moment under pressure. The symptoms of corset wearing, anxiety, fainting, and weakness were often misdiagnosed as hysteria, leading to even more useless and sometimes dangerous treatments for the women. The physical effort of just existing was doubled. Every movement, Every step required a strength that the oxygen-starved blood could barely provide to the muscles. There were movements for rational dress, but they were mocked. The fashion was too strong, the social pressure too great to simply let the body breathe. The body remembers. Even years after stopping, the ribs would remain deformed, a skeletal record of a life spent in pursuit of a geometric perfection. The bow hides the pain. The beauty of the silk covers the reality of the steel. It is the perfect metaphor for the Victorian era's secrets. She envies the bird's freedom to expand its lungs. She's a prisoner of her own class, her own gender, and her own wardrobe's steel bars. Now it is just a museum piece, a curiosity of the past, but for millions of women, it was the reality of every waking hour of their lives. They would repair them until they fell apart. A woman's relationship with her corset was one of necessity, pain, and a strange, forced kind of loyalty. She's a shape in the mist, an artificial creation of fabric and bone, moving through a world that values her silhouette more than her health. The first deep breath of the day usually happened in the dark, alone, a secret moment of humanity in a life of performative, painful beauty. Luxury was pain. The more you paid, the more rigid the structure, and the more perfect your body became in the eyes of the watching world. The mask of the Victorian lady never slipped. She would suffer in silence, her internal organs screaming, while her face remained a picture of calm and grace. Nature was something to be controlled and reshaped, whether it was a rosebush or a woman's waist. The Victorian mind demanded a strict, artificial order. Her hand can almost span the entire distance of her waist. It is a terrifying achievement, a victory over her own biology that she wears with pride. Under the lace, it was grimy and harsh. The reality of the corset was far less romantic than the paintings and fashion plates would ever suggest. The corset was her support, but also her weakness. It held her up when she was too tired to stand, but it was the reason she was tired. Every seam was a line of defense against the natural world. Every stitch was a commitment to the painful religion of the 19-inch waistline. The delicate look was often just cyanosis. A lack of oxygen turned the skin a faint blue, which was then covered with white lead powder. Listen to the tension. The sound of the laces tightening was the soundtrack of the Victorian morning, a ritual of constriction that defined their lives. Even her music was affected. She couldn't lean into the keys, couldn't breathe with the melody. She was a statue playing a song for a ghost. The obsession with being small was everywhere. Small feet, small waists, small appetites. The ideal woman was a woman who took up as little space as possible. The panic of the last breath, the moment when the brain realizes the body is failing. This was a weekly occurrence for many fashionable Victorian ladies. Sometimes the steel would snap and pierce the skin, a literal wound from fashion, a sharp reminder of the danger that lay just beneath the silk. The body was a puzzle they were trying to solve by removing the pieces, but the pieces were vital organs, and the solution was a slow death. Even in grief, they had to be beautiful. The corset remained, a black shadow of a figure that was as dead as the person they were mourning. The end of the day, the end of the strength, the corset wins again, leaving the woman exhausted, broken, and ready to do it all over again. They walked a tightrope every day. One side was social acceptance, the other was physical collapse. They chose the thin line of the corset every time. The distortion was complete. From the face to the waist, the Victorian woman was a masterpiece of artificiality, a triumph of style over the substance of life. The gate is locked. We move from the physical cage to a more romanticized, but equally deadly, form of Victorian beauty, the beauty of illness. In the 19th century, there was a strange and morbid obsession with a disease that was killing millions, tuberculosis, or the consumption. The symptoms of the disease, the weight loss, the pale skin, the red lips, and the bright eyes, were actually considered the height of fashion and beauty. The blood on the lace became a symbol of a tragic, poetic soul. Women would even use makeup to mimic the signs of the terminal illness. They wanted to look as if their skin was so thin and delicate that the life force was barely contained, a look they called ethereal or otherworldly. The sick room was a stage. Being ill was a way for women to gain attention and social standing, a performance of fragility that many took too far. Extreme thinness was a sign of the consumptive beauty. They would starve themselves to reach a level of frailty that was actually a sign of the body's end. Poets like Byron and Keats romanticized the disease, making it seem like a noble and spiritual way to die, a slow fading of the flame. They were the beautiful dead before they were even gone. The line between being a fashion icon and being a corpse was dangerously thin for them. The lily was the flower of the consumptive, pure, white, and already dying. It was the perfect accessory for the woman who wanted to look tragically beautiful. While they chased the look, the reality was a slow, painful destruction of the lungs. The coughing fits were hidden. The blood was wiped away with silk. The fever gave their eyes a supernatural glow. It was a brilliance that came from the body's last, desperate efforts to survive, mistaken for a mark of grace. They called it the White Plague. But for those who didn't have the disease, it was a style choice, a way to signal their sensitivity and high class. Rouge was applied specifically to the cheeks to mimic the hectic flush of tuberculosis, creating a look of constant tragic excitement and impending doom. The reality was far from the drawing room ideal. It was a world of sweat, pain, and isolation, where the beauty of the disease was finally stripped away. Even the hair became finer and more lustrous in the early stages of the disease, adding to the deceptive allure of the consumptive's tragic, fading beauty. The pose was everything, a look of total exhaustion and surrender, as if the weight of the world and her own beauty was too much to bear. They were ghosts at their own tea tables, living shadows who were more interested in the aesthetic of the end than the reality of the present. She moves as if she's already halfway to the spirit world. Every step is a performance of light-footed, ethereal grace that hides a profound physical weakness. The fashion trend ended at the grave. Thousands of women who chased this look ended up as more than just a memory. They became a statistic of death. The disease wrote the fashion rules of the 1800s. It was a dark, ink-stained era where the symptoms of death were the ingredients of a beautiful life. She is the picture of romantic despair, a woman who has embraced the darkness and the cold, finding beauty in the very things that are killing her. The dead were always with them. The culture was saturated with the imagery of the end, making the consumptive look not scary, but deeply, hauntingly familiar. They tried to understand it through science and art, but they ended up just falling in love with the appearance of the tragedy instead of the cure. The lightness was the goal, to be as light as a feather, as thin as a shadow, as fleeting as a breath in the cold winter air. She sees herself in the art. She's the muse of her own destruction, a living painting that is slowly being erased by a terminal, fashionable illness. The heart beats too fast in the body of the consumptive, a drum roll for the end, played out in the neck of a beautiful dying Victorian lady. The reflection is broken, just like the body. The dream of beauty has become a nightmare of reality, where the only exit is a quiet, tragic exit. The bell rings in the silence of the sick room, a small, lonely sound that marks the end of the fashion trend and the beginning of the end. She's almost invisible in the light, a figure of pure aesthetic, a ghost of the 19th century who traded her health for a moment of immortal style. The struggle is over, the beauty is complete. She has reached the ultimate goal of the consumptive look, the peace of the final, graceful moment of life. Fragility was the Victorian lady's greatest strength and her greatest weakness. It was the lens through which she saw herself and the world around her. The voice of the past fades away. The diary ends with a whisper, a final record of a life spent in the service of a beautiful, deadly lie. The veil is lowered. The performance is finished. We have seen the face of the Victorian era, and it is a face of poison, pain, and pale beauty. The petals are all gone. The bowl is full of the dust of the past. We are left with the silence of history and the echo of a cough. Time stands still for the consumptive beauty. She is forever 20, forever pale, and forever dying in the golden light of our historical imagination and memory. Sleep now in the shadow of the past. The era of the consumptive beauty is over, leaving behind only the haunting images and the tragic, beautiful stories. It remains as a witness, a silent reminder of the blood, the tears, and the toxic chemicals that were the true price of Victorian high society grace. She is gone, into the light she so desperately tried to reflect in her own skin. Her story is our lesson. Her pain is our history's truth. They became the statues they admired, cold, hard, and perfect, but lacking the warmth and the breath of a truly healthy, living and breathing human being. The poison is still here. The legacy of the Victorian beauty secrets is written in the soil of our culture, a dark stain that never quite fades. The house is full of ghosts, the ghosts of the women who died for a look, who suffered for a style, and who were lost for a silhouette. The truth is finally revealed. Without the poison, she is human. Without the corset, she is free. Without the disease, she is finally, truly herself again. Let the toxins be washed away. Let the air fill the lungs. Let the body be what it was always meant to be, a vessel for life. We return to the present, but we carry the knowledge of the past with us, a warning about the extremes we go to for the sake of beauty. The tools have changed, but the desire remains. We still chase perfection, still measure our waists, still dream of a face that doesn't show any age. Is it truly safe? Or will the people of the future look back at us and our chemicals with the same horror we feel for the Victorians lead? The cage is now internal. We reshape ourselves from the inside out with silicon and steel, chasing a silhouette that is just as artificial as the corset. The mirror still tells us stories. It still whispers that we aren't enough, that we need to be more, to be better, to be perfect at any cost. The ballroom is now digital. The pressure to conform is global, reaching into every corner of our lives through the screens in our very hands today. True beauty is resilience. It is the ability to grow in the cracks of a world that demands perfection, and to thrive despite the pressure of society. Embrace the human. Celebrate the life that shows on your face. The Victorian era was a tragedy of artificiality. Let our era be a celebration of truth. Time is the only thing we can't buy or build. Don't spend it poisoning your body or crushing your ribs for the sake of a fleeting fashion. Breathe. It is the most beautiful thing you can do. Let the air fill your lungs and your soul, and let the Victorian ghosts rest in peace. We are the sum of our history. We learn from the mistakes of those who came before us, and we try to build a more beautiful future. The story of the 1800s is over. The secrets are revealed. The lessons are learned. We are ready to write a new chapter of beauty and health. A real smile is more beautiful than any painted mask. A healthy body is more graceful than any corseted frame. Let this be our new standard. Close the book on the past. Carry the lessons in your heart, but leave the pain and the poison behind in the dusty libraries of history. The light of the 19th century fades. The shadows retreat. We are left in the safety and the clarity of our own modern, healthy world today. You're safe. You're healthy. You're beautiful just as you are. Remember the price others paid and value the freedom you have to breathe. The heart is the center of your beauty. Take care of it. Feed it. Protect it from the toxins of fashion and the poisons of societal pressure. The world is wide and beautiful. There is so much more to see than just your own reflection in a cracked, tarnished silver Victorian vanity mirror. Your eyes are for seeing the world, not just for being seen by it. Cherish your vision, cherish your health, and cherish the truth of your own life. Nourish yourself. Beauty comes from within, from the food you eat, the air you breathe, and the thoughts you choose to keep in your mind every day. We are part of something much larger than a fashion trend. We are part of the universe, a beautiful and complex creation that needs no toxic improvement. Let the past go. Let the restrictions fall away. Be free to be yourself in all your natural, imperfect, and incredibly beautiful human glory and grace. Clear your vision. See the truth of the world and your own place in it. You don't need a mask to be worthy of love and admiration. Joy is the best beauty secret. It lights up the face in a way that no lead paint or Belladonna extract ever could in the past. Connect with the living world. Be part of the cycle of life, not the cycle of destruction. True beauty is found in our connection to nature. Simple is beautiful. Natural is grace. You are a pearl of great price, just as you are, without any toxic additives or artificial painful structural changes. A new day begins. A new era of beauty is here. One that values the person more than the appearance, and health more than the silhouette. Good night to the past. Good morning to the truth. May your dreams be full of natural beauty, and your life be full of real, healthy grace. Redefine it for yourself. Don't let the ghost of the past tell you what is beautiful. You are the author of your own modern aesthetic. The candle is gone. The story is told. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the dark and dangerous secrets of the Victorian era. Sleep well and stay safe in the light of the 21st century. Your health is your most beautiful asset. Treasure it always. Good night.